So we're going to look at how you can save money when you're starting out to run D&D as a dungeon master, and most people want some type of physical stuff in their game, maps, minis, and terrain. So we're going to look at how you can save money doing this, especially when you're starting out. The first thing to consider is maps. How do you cut costs when it comes to maps and still make it a good enough experience for the players at your table? The first option that you got to work with is just raw pen and paper. Actually, using paper isn't that bad of a deal. It's very clear. It gets to what you want to convey to the players very clearly. They get to see, this is the room, this is what is inside the room, and this is how far and how big everything is. Paper can be awesome at just using as a baseline, and most people have some type of paper at home and a pen. And when you have that, you don't need it to be gridded. Starting out, you can just guesstimate sizes of stuff and then just wing it. It will become wonky when you do this, but that is fine. When you're starting out, players will not linger on whether or not you scaled the room perfectly or not. As long as you have a clear sense of, this is the room, here's where the goblins are, and here's where we are, and what is in between and what is in the room that I can use in the fantasy, then you're good. It is perfectly fine to start out running D&D on just pen and paper, using a blank sheet of A4 paper with a pen, drawing everything in. Second thing you can use for running D&D, starting out when it comes to physical maps, is just a chessboard or other types of wargaming or a board game map material. These things can be very good, very bad. Depends on what type of board game you have at home. You might want to not use a Monopoly board, but a chess board is good because it's usually gridded in a similar style, at least, to what D&D's got working on. But using a gridded system or a gridded board game will get you some kind of background. You can then use that as a baseline for making other stuff on top of it. Third one is a little bit weird, but it can work, especially if you're more inclined to the theater of mind, or you're playing a role-playing game that is much more loose with its range increments, and you just need more of a good mental image to give to your players. One thing you can do if you have a phone or a camera is that you go outside if you have a forest nearby or a terrain thing nearby, and you just snap photos of whatever it is that you want to convey to your players. Maybe you have a cool forest nearby that has a cool hill. Take a photo of that and then use that as a baseline for the terrain in the game. Now, this can be very, very clear because it gives you a good image of what everything looks like, and kind of sets the scene in the player's fantasy of the mind when the encounter is at hand. Now, what it doesn't do is that you're probably not going to be able to get a top-down perspective unless you have like a cool drone or something. But for most people, you're just going to be able to snap a pic with your phone or whatever, and then you have something to work with. You can just show them the picture and say, this is what you see, this is where your characters are, the enemies are on top of that hill, what do you do? And then you've got a good reference because, like, you've got an actual picture. It looks exactly like what you're describing. Or you might say, there's a castle on top of this hill, what do you do? Then you have something to work from. Lastly, most people get some form of cardboard or styrofoam when they order packages from different stuff. Now, you can use this to your advantage. If you have a bunch of cardboard lying around, you can strip that and paint the top of it, or just add stuff to the top of it that is still kind of in this unbranded way. And then if you have paint at home and pencils and whatever, then you can actually start drawing on top of it and painting on top of it and making whole scenes. It can look really, really good, and it will serve as some kind of baseline. And you can make, Bob Ross it. You can make rivers, trees, and whatever you want, and essentially from this. If you have a glue gun, you can even make terrains from it, which we'll get to later. First idea for terrain, you don't want to do it at all. If you have pen and paper, you can easily convey what is around you from just drawing it. People will understand if you're just clear with what you're drawing. If you just say 10 feet above, then they will know it's 10 feet above. If this is a hillside, write hillside on top of it, and then people will be able to see it and see, it's a hillside. Or if you're shit at drawing, you can just draw a circle and then just write table on top of it. And then there you go. People know that that's a table. When it comes to if you want to use elevation in your game and use some kind of like to signify this creature is flying or this creature is higher above than the rest, then you can use household objects. You can use a glass to just flip it upside down, put your mini on top of it, and then there you go. You have something that signifies that this creature is flying. It's kind of see-through, right? And it will let everybody know that this creature is above the others. You can also use other household objects, right? You can have books, you can have boxes, you can have cups and whatnot to just signify that this thing is higher up than the rest. When it comes to nature terrain, the easiest way to do this, if you have nature at your beck and call outside, is to actually just go outside and steal pebbles, little sticks, moss, grass, whatever you need, to just put that stuff on your map. It will look messy, but it will signify what it is that you're trying to convey. If you have like a big field of grass that's kind of difficult terrain, you might grab some moss and just do that. Now, this will, of course, make it much more... if you already have some Legos, it's a wonderful addition. It can be customized, made. You will have to build it in before, but there's a whole Reddit to just dedicated to building D&D stuff with Legos. So it does work. It's very customizable, making terrain. You can reuse it. You can make watchtowers, hills, houses, whatever you need, but it is very costly to get into if you don't have it. But say you have like parents or relatives that are just having Lego in the garage somewhere, you might be able to say like, hey, could I borrow that, or could I buy it, or could I get it? And then you just have massive amounts of D&D terrain stuff. Last thing that you might want to need is minis. The first thing that is an option is just to use random objects. If you've got candy, you can use that as a signifier. The kind of core identity of minis is just to be able to tell where you are as a player and where the enemies are, as the DM. And if you got those bases covered, you're fine. These can be anything, right? You can use chessboard pieces, Monopoly pieces, Risk little miniatures or whatever, as long as you know where the enemies are and where you are, and then you're fine. Most players will not remember what type of mini you used unless it's really cool. They will just remember that they tossed the goblin down the chasm or whatever. Third option is kind of to print out. So there are some people that draw and make art that you can either pay for, or sometimes they're even free, which you can just then print out in paper, and then you can cut them out and glue them on cardboard. It will be a process. It takes time to make these, but once you've made them, well, there you go. You got a whole mini library, which is awesome. And it's usually quite cheap for the amount of minis that you're getting. So that is a thing you can do. Continuing on the cardboard theme, there are companies that make cardboard minis. Now, the new Keep on the Borderlands and Paizo and Dragon's Bane have all used cardboard minis because they're very easy to store. You can get a lot of them, and they're very clear on what they are, and someone else has painted them. They're in color and whatever. And you can just buy some bases, and then you can stick them on top of them, and then you can easily store these minis. So I think it's a really good option if you actually want to invest in getting some type of mini. This is a good place to start because you can get a lot of bang for your buck when it comes to the cardboard minis. You can get a whole library of monsters, and you can get enough of them so that when they're actually fighting a group, you might have 6, 5, or even 10 pieces to actually move around and not just have 3 or 2. Last option that you got, used wargaming. So, for example, these elves that I have here, I found them for like, I think the equivalent of the Swedish price would be €5. And I got a whole bunch of them. And now I have like if I ever need evil elves, I can just plop them down. I've got a whole army. And most people, when they're switching armies or when they want to just stop wargaming, they might just sell these packets. And I haven't had need to paint them either, because most of them are already, ready to use. So therefore, they're very good for DMs that don't want to paint their minis. You can usually find these, especially when it comes to like Warhammer, Age of Sigmar, and the like, and then you can just buy them as a group, and then that like, oh, I have goblins, I have elves, etc., if need be. Last thing to consider is kind of like you have to weigh cost effectiveness of these options, right? How much will it add in immersion if I buy something? Can I just do it with pen and paper? If you can, then you probably should, right? Especially when you're starting out. This is a hobby that can become very expensive. A lot of people will spend so much money on minis and terrain, and it's hard to store. It will take up like a whole room of stuff if you're not careful, and it's like wonky to take out and store somewhere and organize. So starting out, pen and paper is fine. Get some type of mini if you want. Cardboard ones are my recommendation. And then you're good to go for years to come. Remember that like Critical Role even played with pen and paper for the longest time. And Matt drew the maps, and it was simple, but it worked well. And then they had some minis. Now they're a production, so they have Dwarven Forge custom-made stuff. So that's cool and all, but you don't need to have that. You can only get by on pen and paper. And then try to grid it if you want to, but you don't need to. And lastly, try to reuse and recycle as much as possible. There are a ton of minis already printed out, and they're just sitting somewhere at someone they're trying to resell them. Try to buy them first. Like, it's usually way cheaper. It's better for the environment. And they're usually already painted, and that's cool. You don't need to buy paints and stuff. And then you got a cool mini that might not even, exist in the game, but you can make a monster for it. So those are my recommendations. If you have other recommendations, please leave them in the comments. But other than that, I hope this helped you in some way to at least start in a cheaper way than just buying everything.